Welcome to this episode of the Personal Development Podcast with Paola Castro and Michael J. Emery.
Welcome to the Personal Development Podcast series with Paola Castro and Michael Emery. Hey, Paola, how's it going?
Hi, Mike. I'm very, very well. Hi, everyone.
Hello. So, it's been an interesting week for Paola and I. We were just talking a little bit. Sometimes you run into these things. My goal is to be as real and raw as possible with this. I think that's the most authentic way. And so, we're both feeling a little bit tired. I know that we had really full schedules, and it's okay. That's part of life. And there are ways to offset that. And sometimes you get busy and you've got to slow down a little bit, take care and recuperate, recover. So, Paola, why don't you lead us through the guided visualization just to get into our sacred space for this time? You okay with that?
I'm more than okay with that. So I invite you all to close your eyes and get nice and tall right there where you're sitting, and start tuning in with your breath, going in and out your nostrils. And start noticing how easy it is to breathe. No need to struggle. No need to cling. No need to attach. It just happens effortlessly with ease. So breathe in and out. And I want all of us to rest our awareness on that space in our hearts, that space in our chest where our heart is. And focus all of your attention right there in your heart area. And as you're breathing a little slower and a little deeper through the heart, we start activating the coherence of the heart. Connecting to the present moment, giving ourselves permission to be here right now. And now we're going to anchor ourselves to 2 words, and the words are inner ease. And we're going to breathe in through the heart, inner ease. And you're going to breathe out inner ease. Inhale, inner ease. Let go with inner ease. And as you're breathing in and out inner ease, you're going to anchor yourself to that feeling tone of ease. We all know how that feels when things go with ease. That ease inside yourself, that ease inside your heart. No need to struggle, to go against the current. Just flow gently down the stream with ease. Inhale, inner ease. Let go with inner ease. As you continue breathing in and out the inner ease, you're going to see yourself navigating this day, the rest of the day, with ease. How are you going to respond to life, to the stimulus that happens all the time? How are you going to practice your freedom when the feeling tone behind it is ease? How are you going to speak? How are you going to think? How are you going to act? If you only anchor yourself with ease, inner ease. So we're going to breathe a few more times. Inhale, inner ease through the heart. Let go with ease. 2 more times. Inhale with ease through your heart. Exhale with inner ease. Soften. Beautiful. 1 more time. Inhale through the nose, inner ease. And let go now. And we are ready to begin this conversation with ease. We can open our eyes.
Yeah, that was great. So it was funny. It reminded me of some variation of the Taoist principle of life is like we're all floating down the river of life, and you can go kicking and screaming, or you can kick back and relax. But either way, you can't stop it. You just got to flow with it. So
Gotta play with it. It's a lot easier than fighting against the current.
exactly.
Okay.
So that's what I wanted to talk about today. And one of the things that is really important, I think, is using some road maps or having some guides, some mile markers or kilometer markers, depending on your country and your language. But having some sort of mental map in terms of where you're going and what to expect. I wanted to share a slide with you really quickly. And just a moment here, let me open this up. This was something I heard in years ago in a different life by a guy named Brian Buffini, and he was talking about business and developing a business. And he said, most people start a business, and I think this is really applicable to life in general. But most people start a business and they start out in a state of survival. They're just trying to pay the bills, and that's like most of us in life. I mean, life's not too different than that. We're trying to just pay the bills and get by, enjoy time when we can. And to get out of survival and to get into a sense of stability, there's something that's broken in that survival mode. So usually it comes back to our habits, the actions, the things that are happening on autopilot or what we're not consciously aware of. So when you change your habits, which is a process in and of itself, then that can move you into stability, because it's kind of like that overused anecdote, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So until you change habits, you're not going to get different results. And then once you're in stability, for some people that's good enough. And I think that that's really one of the major themes that I felt I grew up with in the USA was just do enough to, get a house, get married, white picket fence, live in the suburbs, have some kids, go to church, and that's good enough. But I think in the past, probably 10 to 20 years, we've had massive upsets. I think that the internet has created a lot of upsets. The ability for people to communicate and share ideas more than anything has created a lot of upsets. And so what used to be perceived as stable is probably highly unstable right now. And it's highly unpredictable in terms of, what can you really plan on or depend upon that's outside of yourself. And so I have an uncle that I'm gonna stop sharing really quickly. I had an uncle, and he passed away about 2 years ago. And I remember this guy. He worked in a union job, kind of like he was a welder for a big shipping company, and he worked at this job for, I'm guessing, over 50 years. And every day he had the same routine. Every weekday he would go down there to his job. He would clock in. He would get permission to do some overtime. Then he'd maybe work a few hours on Saturday. And that was his life. And that was really, when I look at it from the outside, I look at that as that was the major investment of his life. And there are two things that troubled me about that. First of all was the amount of time that he spent doing something that was the same thing every single day. He might have gotten better at welding or better in this or that, but at the end of his lifetime, I don't think that he really maximized that his possibilities or capabilities. The other part of this was that environment does not exist anymore, at least in the USA, where somebody can go get a job and stay at the same company for 50 years and have a retirement. It's just, we live in this changing world that if you stay with a company, an employer, for more than just a few years, it's kind of like strange. It's like, well, shouldn't you be like moving on? Shouldn't you be, getting a new job? And so there's that concept about stability where I think it's what we want, but the moment we get stability, then comes in boredom. Mm-hmm. So it's like, we got to get more challenge, get some more fear, And fear in a positive context, like fear is like, some more uncertainty that causes us to develop some more skill sets, some more resources, so we can continue to move upward. And going back to that image, to go from stability and to do something and to do it successfully, you've got to change your mindset about what it is. And I think that's a subtle shift in the thinking pattern of going, that's good enough, to I want it to be the best, or I want to do something great. I want to be good at it. And then there's that fourth stage where I think that's when we start to think outside of ourselves, outside of maybe our familial bubble, or our close circle of friends. And that's towards significance. What can I do? What can I leave behind? What can I do to make this world a better place? And I don't necessarily think that's the calling for every single person, but I don't think it's something that you can't do. But I'm just saying that I don't know that every single person in the world feels that kind of drive, because that's a massive step in. It could be something that's pursued in a selfless sort of direction, like you've got a cause that you want to champion, or it could be something that you see a problem and you want to champion that cause, kind of like the concept of conscious capitalism, where you're like, look, here's this problem, I can provide this solution, and it can also pay my bills, and I can grow a business based around solving this problem. And so the reason why I wanted to start with this is in the context of preparation, which is the theme for this week's podcast. Knowing that if you feel like you're in survival mode, the first thing to do is to evaluate your habits and identify what's happening in terms of your habits. What is it that you do the first thing that you wake up in the morning? I know that most of us, I'm guilty of it, not every single day when I'm conscious of it, but first thing that I do often is I reach over and I turn on my cell phone. Not always. There are times where I'll go do yoga or I'll go do something else before to just try to get into that right state of mind. But it's that unconscious behavior and breaking down what is it that's going on, and what is it that causes me to feel comfortable. And I really believe that if you can do something that causes a degree of discomfort because it's different or it's challenging, if you can do that on a daily basis, it really does a lot for you, because what you're doing is you're creating new neural pathways. You're learning different behaviors.
Mm-hmm. I believe also that your habits comes from your way of thinking. So, as you know, I love the teachings of Joe Dispenza, and the model that he uses is that you have neural pathways in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
There are thoughts that you repeatedly thought over and over again, and then it created a belief. That belief will fire thoughts that are congruent with that belief. Those thoughts will fire feelings or emotions that are congruent with the thoughts. And then those emotions will create habits. So we're habitual beings, and we do what we do because they're giving us a chemical response in the body. So, we overeat, or we oversleep, or we are lethargic, because that's giving us almost like a feedback loop about our emotions. So I believe in changing our habits, being aware what are the habits, and also look, where does that habit come from? I often talk in my classes about the habit of overeating that I had for many, many years, where I would just eat my emotions away. And I had to trace it back to what is it that I'm believing about myself. And one of my beliefs, my rude beliefs, were, well, I can't feel. I don't have permission to feel, to cry, I can't really express my emotions because that will make me inadequate. So what do? I'm just going to overeat. And it was almost like it was a pattern of self-sabotage. So I believe in changing your habits. I think that's a very first step. But also know that habit is coming from a belief system, from thoughts that are supporting and backing up that habit. And usually when we're in survival mode, the thoughts or the belief is, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy of a good life. Life is hard. People are against me. We behave like as if we were living in a very hostile environment. And we're always defending ourselves because the belief is like, I better guard myself and protect myself so that I can be ready and not die. So, yeah, I think it's a good way. I don't know when he said that, what he said, this guy, what was his name? Jared? What's his name?
Who?
The guy that talk about the 4 stages?
Oh, Buffini.
Buffini.
Yeah.
I don't know when Buffini was talking about this, but I think it's a great first step. It's like an entry step.
Yes.
So what are those habits? Because it's easier to look at our behavior than to go deep within and look for what is it I'm thinking, what is it I'm feeling. Some people are so detached. Well, I know for myself, I was so detached from my emotions. I wasn't even knowing what I was feeling. I just knew that I was doing things that weren't of my highest good. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's what I got to say. I think it's great, but also to know that you do what you do because there's something that is supporting that doing.
Yeah, and I also believe that it has a highest intention. So, like in the case of overeating, it's not that you're trying to particularly hurt yourself. It's that there's a part of you that's trying to feel something or feel good or feel fulfilled.
Yeah.
Literally. And so,
yeah, all addictions is when you're looking for that love in the wrong places. And so food is highly nurturing. And so you're looking for that soothing, because I don't know how to feel. I need to soothe myself. And I think in psychology, this is called the secondary gain. You do what you do because you're getting something from it.
Yeah. Most of the time it's unconscious. And, I'd say almost all of the time it's unconscious. But so that's one action step that somebody can do today is take an inventory of your day tomorrow. Or you could do it, for today, but just write down, what did you do first thing in the morning? And just close your eyes and recount the day. You can look at your clock and go, or your calendar, you can see the appointments that you had or the things you had to do. But you can start to fill in those blanks and you'll start to realize that there are certain things that you do on autopilot. And it's not too terribly hard to change those. It can actually be terribly easy, terribly fun. And so one of the things is ask yourself, what's it like when? And so, for example, we started out this podcast, and just we had done a quick recap on our weeks and what had been going on today. And we both have had full days, and there's a lot of things that, just like everybody else, just like you listening to this. And so what was going through my mind is, well, that's a perfect example of using state change. So what's it like when you feel relaxed? And we already went through a breathing exercise and that ease that was going through there. And I felt that flowing through my heart, and just especially the exhale part, it was just like, let it go, let it go. That's what reminded me of the Taos River concept. And it really, there's certain things in life that you can control. And sometimes that's your emotional state. And so, and most of the time, I think that we're almost on defense with that. We're kind of reactionary because we don't know what's going to come into be perceived by our 5 senses. That's going to come into our environment that might trigger us or might, generate a certain sort of reaction. And then what we have to do is we have to manage it. We have to do emotional cleanup or emotional state management. And so it's powerful. And I think that the biggest thing that we want to share in these early stages of these podcasts, because there's so many more concepts and topics that we want to talk about. What we're doing is we're creating a foundation here. And the idea is that as you begin to prepare yourself, you're going to start to notice what you were not paying attention to, how life was happening on default, and how, in some cases, how your perceived world, your limitations were actually operating in this really small, constrictive paradigm. And it doesn't have to be that way. And in fact, probably everything that you want is on the other side of that constricting paradigm.
Right. Can I say something too? If you're having trouble finding what's the habit, let's say, well, I don't know what I do unconsciously. I would say also check on those realities that you're not liking, those realities about your life, those situations in your life where you feel uncomfortable or you wish it wasn't that way. Let's say financially you're not doing very well, physically you're not feeling healthy, with friends you're not, you're fighting all the time, or not having, secluding yourself from the world. If you're constantly anxious, like look at those situations of your reality that you're not liking, and then take it back a step and say, what is the habit that is creating this reality? What is that thing that I do that takes me here? And we've talked in the the previous podcast, that it requires to take 100% responsibility, because when we're in victim consciousness, it's easier to say, well, it's their fault.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing that by this point, this is the 4th podcast, you're already been taking responsibility. What is that habit that is supporting that reality, that is creating that thing?
Yeah, it's very powerful. I wanted to share another slide, and this is it's based upon the work of Carl Rogers, and he was a psychologist, and he had outlined some goals for becoming what he referred to as a fully functioning person. And I want to read his quote first. He wrote, "This process of the good life is not, I'm convinced, a life for the faint-hearted. It involves the stretching and growing of becoming more and more of one's potentialities. It involves the courage to be. It means launching oneself fully into the stream of life." And there was, he had outlined 7 points, and the points were openness to experience, an increasingly existential lifestyle, increasing organismic trust, freedom of choice, creativity, reliability and constructiveness, and a rich, full life. And that's where the rich, full life quote came from. And I wanted to go through these one by one and just do some personal reflection here. And I remember, I think that we all are, obviously in one degree or another, different people than we were, well, maybe not all of us, but than we were, say, when we were a teenager in high school. And it's not to say that, for example, in my own case, my own situation, I've met people or re-encountered people from high school or from university, and I swear to God, like, they have not changed. Like, and often they were the people that had these really dedicated, like, plans. Like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And they somehow managed to stay on that path. And I find it, I mean, have you experienced people like that? The kind of, yeah, it's not very many, but they're definitely there. Like, the people that just kind of, they seem to go through the right steps and stages at the right time, which for whatever reason, I think from the perspective of society, it looks good. It looks like that person's got their SHIT together. It's like they're like, oh, they're so on track. They're so this and that. And then I step back and I take a deeper look at it. And I see a lot of missed experiences, like they're unwilling to risk certain things. And it's almost like they've created this cocoon, the safe cocoon around them of what's perceived to be valuable by society, but what actually prevents one's personal growth. It prevents the fullness of life. It actually prevents you from taking the risk of making a mistake.
Yeah. What I've seen too is that there is a moment around 27, 28 years old. I've seen a pattern. Mm-hmm. I like astrology, so they say it's when your Saturn returns to your birth house. Whether that's true or no, whether that's relevant or not, mm-hmm. I believe that there are moments in our life where life is like shaking us a little bit and saying, do you want to wake up? Are you open to a new possibility? And what I've seen so I started, I started personal development a long time ago, but when I got certified, I was around 26, started when I was 25, ended when I was 26.
So, and as a coach.
as a coach.
Okay.
And then I remember at the time, people my age were looking at me like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, what kind of Kool-Aid did you drink, right? Just that was like a complete no. Like, we're not even knowing what you're talking about, and we're not even going to pay attention to it. And as we've matured, life has happened.
Yeah.
And I feel like in the moment that we are, in this moment, 2018, there's no other choice but to say yes. And people that are saying no to this are starting to feel the deep pain of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like in the past generations before us, it was easier for them to kind of ignore it. Oh, I don't want to deal with that. But now I'm seeing a shift where it's either that or it's going to be super painful.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good thing. I think that the energy of the planet is elevating so much that it's really, opening more people's eyes. So that's why another reason why I'm very excited about this podcast, to talk about these things for those that, starting to navigate, and for those that have been navigating it. And sometimes people have been navigating and they're like, well, I don't understand what I just did. I just know that a lot of things has happened. So it's great concepts that we're talking about here.
Yeah, I'd say that to add to that is what's entered into the system is a lot more variety, a lot more variables, I guess would be a better way of expressing it. So, in the past, maybe somebody that is in their 60s or 70s, they might have experienced that degree of safety where you might have had a job for 2 or 3 decades, and that doesn't really exist. You might have been in a relationship and you thought, hey, I'm married, so we're kind of like in this until death do us part. And then death or divorce or something causes the great parting to happen. And so there's a lot of different changes, a lot of variables that exist now that didn't exist 20, 30 years ago, not to mention 100 or 200 years ago. And so we live in a society now where it's okay for the most part to challenge the Christian church, say, I don't believe, it's okay. Whereas, if you were to say that you weren't a Christian in, say, the USA or Canada or Latin America, Christian or Catholic, 50 years ago, people look at you like, oh my God, you're a terrible person. And so it's, there's a lot of different changes, a lot of different variables being added to the mix, I guess is the best way to put it. Yeah. And so that creates a high degree of unpredictability.
Yeah. And it's in that space of uncertainty when growth happens. Mm-hmm. Because when you're totally certain, you're probably in your comfort zone. And when you're in your comfort zone, you're not growing very much. So I love that first step, which is openness to, what is it?
Openness to experience.
I love that. And when we talk about all of this, spiritual development, personal development, one of the things that I like to say, and this comes from Reverend Michael, he's, says, just be open, be willing. Willingness is more important than logic. Willingness is more important to know how it's going to happen, how everything is going to work. It's that openness of the heart to say, you know what, I'm ready. I'm ready to take a step into this new path of development. And then as you're doing that, you start increasing, this existential lifestyle, which you just explained to me what exactly it means. For me, existential, when you start asking all of these questions. In Spanish, the word existential doesn't have the most positive connotation.
Okay.
It almost seems like you're confused. But the way you explain it is when you are looking at yourself from an outside perspective. Is that right?
Sure. It's like it's having that external orientation, like something that is external is affecting you, or that there's a greater meaning. And it's a psychological perception. And so what happens is I look at the list, the 7 points here that Carl Rogers outlined, is the first one is becoming open to experience. And then what happens next? Well, you get some good experiences. Probably all experiences are good. It depends on how you categorize them, based upon your perceptions. But you get some experiences, and then some of those experiences, you might think that they're failures. You might actually have some real failures in there, but there's going to be a failure. And then that causes that existential self-interrogation of, why did this happen? What does it mean? Who am I? Why is this going on? And that's really what we're lining up here for you, is this foundation, so that you're aware that this is going to happen. And when you fail, we've got resources created for you that can help you to increase your sense of trust within yourself, within the universe, within your own ability to respond by design to situations. And I think what that does is it dramatically enhances your freedom of choice. You can choose things. You can choose to do things that used to scare you. And I think that that's probably anything that is worth doing, anything that's challenging, is probably going to scare you a little bit. Mm-hmm. Because it's going to demand that you make more of yourself. And do that, you've got to harness all of your creativity.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
As you do that, you become a more reliable and a more constructive person. You become somebody that looks to add value to other people. And I believe that the payment of that is experiencing a rich, full life. And a life full of experiences, full of creativity and shared moments.
Yeah, I love that.
And I believe that's this preparation process that we're all going through. And it's really that, like you had said earlier, it's that, the decision to say yes. I accept it. Because what are you going to do? You're going to resist, and there you are. You're floating down the river of life, and you're kicking and screaming. It's like you've got no say over it. You've got no control. You don't know when it's going to end. So how do you make the best of it? Right.
And I know it's not mistaken who watches this and listen to these words. So yeah, we're here to have a rich, full life. That doesn't mean all unicorns and rainbows. It means rich and full of everything. Yeah. But, someone said that it's not the fear of dying. It's the fear of getting to the last day of your life and saying, well, I didn't really live. Mm-hmm. And, we don't know if we're going to come back here. We're going to incarnate one more time. We don't know. Maybe we do, maybe we don't, but this is the time for us to do it. And that willingness, to experience, and then starting to trust. I'm right now in a program for ladies and men too, but it happened that only ladies signed up for it. I guess women are a little bit more willing to do the work. Sometimes, not all the time. I know some amazing men. Well, you're always willing to do the work, and in the place that I work, I also have met some great men that are starting to say yes to this. But anyway, in this program, it's all about creating self-esteem, confidence. And one of the things that I've been telling in the lessons is, do what's scary. Keep proving to yourself with experiences that you can, because self-esteem is the sum of all of these esteemables acts that you do for yourself. Is when you do it despite the fear, is when you try to change a habit and then you start getting little wins. All of that is it's reminding you how powerful you are, because power is not something that we have to look for in another place. Power is something that is within. It just needs to be exposed, and it just needs to emerge. And I think it emerges by taking those 7 steps that you just showed us.
Yeah, definitely. You had mentioned, the difference between women and men, and I think that that's potentially, I think a lot of it has to do with perception. And from the male side, what I can say is that I think that for generations, for a very long time, men potentially looked at the world in terms of, well, why do I need to be better? Because things were really static. There were not a lot of variables. And I'd say in the past, 100 years or so, with women's rights, with, changes in culture, changes in society, changes in healthcare, things like that, it's created a more level playing field. And so I'd say that, the pursuit of that is equal rights. Whether or not that's something that it's existing now, that's a whole different podcast. But what I would say is that there are men that are now probably finding themselves in that painful situation that a woman might have found herself in, 20, 30, 50, 100, 200 years ago or more, thinking, how the hell do I change this? And you start to realize that the environment, there are questions like, puzzles in your environment. The only way that you can solve those is to develop skills and resources. Nobody else can do it for you. And that's what, really, like, the thing that really pisses me off or annoys me is like hearing that victim kind of mentality. Even when I do it myself, I'm just like going, oh, geez, what are you doing, man? Like, stop that. There's no place for that, because at the end of the day, nobody else can save you. Nobody else can do anything for you. It's like, if you want to learn a skill or develop a resource, you have to go do it. Now, other people can help you, but they can't do it for you. And I think that's the challenge where men are finding themselves. And I think it really ties into dating, and we can see a little bit of this through like hypergamy and dating habits or mate selection habits for women. But the other part of it is like hearing from women, like, well, where have all the real men gone? And those kind of like, cliche phrases that we've heard, for so long. But I think there's an element of truth to that too. It's like, there's that desire for men to step up and be better than they are, to just not be lackadaisical or accept the norms that society has, but to go out and to try to challenge and to actually strive against the system, if it were. And I think that's part of the masculine. That's how we develop technologies. That's how we explore our minds, explore the universe. And it's that part of having to go out there and actually use force in a way to, like, you wrestle. It doesn't matter if you're building a city or if you're building schematics for a building, schematics for a spaceship, whatever it is. It's like you're doing this process of intense thinking and intense work, whether that's physical, mental, emotional, but whatever it is. But it requires that you know yourself. It draws it out of you. You have to become aware of your weaknesses, your shadow.
I say yes to that. I agree.
So the assignment for this week: review the day, define some habits, and then define the counter habit. What would be a different habit? What would be a habit, an empowering habit that would move you in the opposite direction or move you closer to what it is that you desire to have? Yeah. And then don't, to implement that habit, don't be like, okay, I'm overweight. Here's just an example. I'm overweight. So if I woke up and I did, 500 sit-ups a day, no, it's not going to work. Sorry. But if you can wake up and you can do one sit-up, perfect. You started a different routine. You changed something. And so we call that the next smallest step. So how do you take the next smallest step with your new habit and make it as simple and as effortless as possible? So you flow in.
What would be for you?
What would be a new habit, a good habit for me? I would say creating a solid, I don't have the interest in spending like an hour going to a yoga class, because I find that it's 15 minutes to get there, 15 minutes to get back, an hour in the class, hour and a half. And I right now in my schedule, I've got so many other activities that's not something I want to do. But a good habit for me to develop, and I've done it off and on, I don't do it daily, but would to do like a 10-minute yoga routine, some stretching in the morning, just to kind of get my heart and my body in the right space for the day.
Yeah. I'm doing a 30-day challenge. It's called Yoga with Adrienne. We can put the link below. It's really good. She's really great. I've been implementing that
Cool.
habit myself by doing it. And something I want to say about habits, it requires repetition and consistency.
Mm-hmm.
It requires repetition and consistency. And here's a little warning: you're gonna want to quit. There's gonna be a couple of days you're like, I don't want to do this. Forget about it. They don't even know I'm doing it, so I'm just failing myself. So it's in that moment, if you manage to continue doing it despite of the fact that you don't want to do it that day because you're tired or whatever, and you keep doing it, it takes about 3 months to create a new pathway in your brain. So, yeah, you haven't asked me. Well, yoga, it's been one, but for me, I'm finding that there's a natural desire of my body to get up really early, but I haven't followed. I still get up like at 5:30, but I know that I can get up earlier, and I know it could really enhance my meditation practice. So starting tomorrow, I went and I was thinking about that this morning. So how come, at 4:44, I think it was today that I woke up, I was ready to get out, but I just kept sleeping. Like, it makes me drowsy if I continue. So that is a mystical hour for me. So I want to wake up earlier.
At what time?
Well, 4:30, 4:45 will be a great time. I can do it because my lifestyle supports it. I live in in Costa Rica, or where I live specifically. It's
Surfer
really,
land. You gotta catch that wave at 5:30 or whatever, 6 o'clock. Yeah, here it's the city that goes all night. I find that my classes and stuff, we don't end some nights until 11:30. I usually can't get to bed before 1 or 2 a.m. So
wow, yeah. Well, you do what works for you,
it's
for
a
your
different
life.
culture. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Paola. Fun stuff. Well, we got more content coming, and we're just peeling the onion here. So, thank you for your time. Thank you for tuning into this podcast. Definitely download or purchase Paola's book free, and download the Attention Shifting app. And if you want coaching, feel free to contact either one of us. So we'll go from there.
Awesome. Yeah. Share the video, like the video, comment the video.
And subscribe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Goodbye.
Take care. Bye.